Hi, this is Greg Hildebrandt. I've been a professional artist for 62 years. I've done a lot of artwork in that time, and I'm still just trying to get it right.
Greg, how are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, Keith? Here we are
I am
again.
doing well. We are live. So, hi to the few people that have already begun to tune in. Um, so, how's your day going, man?
Fine. I'm working on this private commission here, which has got nothing to do with the subject that I think that we're supposed to be talking about, propaganda. But it's just friends asked me to paint this for a friend of theirs. This dog Oscar, I think his name was. He just passed away, and the people would like a portrait of him. So I'm doing that right now. So that's how it's
Friend,
going today. I just started this morning, so it'll probably take me 2 more days to finish it.
man,
Other than
it's going
that,
to be great.
we're fine, health wise, Gene and I. And how about you?
Very good. I'm doing well. Family here is good as well, man. Can't,
Good.
in spite of everything that's going on around us, we're doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hell of a day yesterday, wasn't it?
It it most certainly was. But anyway, man, we're gonna move forward. We had this. You brought this topic up of the quote from Diego Rivera, which I'm going to have you read to
Yeah.
me
Well,
in just a moment. But it fascinated me. I've been thinking about it since you brought it up the other day. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and repeat that quote so we know what it is.
Diego Rivera was a Mexican muralist who came to the States and painted several murals. There's two surviving. There's one in the San Francisco Art School, and it's a single panel of him painting a mural. And the other one's in Detroit, Michigan, where I'm from, which is a masterpiece. I think Diego would consider that his highest success. It's a painting on the Detroit industry. It's magnificent. It's got 27 panels, and it just tells the story. But Diego basically stated his statement was all art is propaganda. The only difference is the kind of propaganda. He goes on to go in more detail, but that's basically the gist of his belief. And he personally was a communist. Granted, according to his biographer Bertram Wolfe, who was a very good friend of his, and I've read that biography several times. It's a great biography. Diego never read Marx or Lenin, so he wasn't like inside that conversation. He had a false concept of Lenin. He thought Lenin was his dream, and it was not. He never projected the idea that Lenin would completely make him do all the art that Lenin wanted to do, and he didn't realize that. Or at least didn't
Yeah,
land on that concept. But in any event, it just was a. And why Diego Rivera for me? Because, like I say, his murals in Detroit, and I'm from Detroit. And the first time I saw that, when my parents took me to the museum, that it's an amazing achievement. I mean, there's 27 panels, so you get this kind of storytelling sense of everything, but magnificently pulled off. He was just, it's al fresco on top of it. He loved Michelangelo and painted in that style and in that technique, I should say. And amazingly, he did it within
sure.
a year. He painted all this thing with assistance.
Hang on. So just for the sake of everyone listening, what do you mean by that alfresco technique, Greg?
It's painting into wet plaster. You've got several layers. I forgot multiple layers of plaster have to be applied properly. In that final thin layer, it dries. It's got a drying time. I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 hours or something like that. And so you've got to paint in sections when you're painting a whole painting. So you got to line it all up. What you're going to fill in now. You're mixing all your paint. His assistants are applying all the plaster. He gets up there on the scaffolding, has to fill that whole area in before the paint settles. It's settling and drying the plaster as you're painting. So in it, the purpose of the alfresco is that the paint gets implanted into the plaster and it becomes very permanent. That's why Michelangelo, the Sistine ceiling is still there. When
Yeah,
and the Last Supper is not, because Leonardo didn't paint al fresco. He didn't want it; it was too much trouble. So he just painted it, on the wall, and we know what that looks like right now.
yeah, sliding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, I found it interesting, because I was looking into him a little bit more. I knew him mainly just because he had been married to Frida
yeah.
for a little while, and so I was just doing a little bit more digging, and I didn't realize that he had done one of those murals in New York as well, and that the Rockefellers either bought it or they owned the building, but they had it absolutely destroyed.
Oh yeah, crazy. And when I read his biography, which is in Bertram Wolf's, it's detailedly covered in it. He details it. It's all because of one head of Lenin that he painted in this group shot. It was a magnificent work from the couple of pictures that his assistants took in the day. And he wouldn't take the head out. They said, "Take the head out." Somebody spotted it, the head in there. Take it out because of the controversy. He planted his feet and would not remove the head from the painting. Just one head, and it's like I swear at Diego, backwards in time. Diego, take the goddamn head out because they destroyed it. They moved in. There was a huge movement to save it because it was painted on panels which could be removed, and there was a gigantic movement of people raising funds, and they were gonna able to take it all down and take it out. But Rockefeller and I guess the manager of the building were so pissed off, they basically just locked the doors one day or one night or when the hell ever it was, I forgot, and they just moved in and smashed it all down with hammers. They just smashed the thing to smithereens. He went back to Mexico. He painted it there, but from to all accounts, it never achieved the magnificence of
Yeah.
the original. But anyway, so
Yeah.
but the one in Detroit that survived, and that was Edsel Ford went to bat for that, and he fought for that, and he wanted that mural in Detroit. And it's controversial, There's controversial aspects to it, politically. But as a kid, when I saw it, my parents took me there. Probably when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Tim and me, my brother and myself, and it just blew my mind. I mean, it's so overpowering. I had no knowledge of the content, the political content, and could care less. My parents were apolitical and never explained it, and I thank God for that. So I was just taken by the magnificence of the art. So it's very impressive. He was always a very impressive artist to me. I mean, he just
Yeah.
settled down in there into the subconscious somewhere, and he's always been there. So and then
And
that,
for anybody that's listening right now, in the description of the YouTube uh, video of this, I provided links to Diego Rivera and to that Detroit industrial mural,
fantastic,
so people could check it out if they want to. Um, so all art is propaganda.
right? Well,
What do you think?
I'm not declaring that myself. It's a question we're asking each other, here,
Yeah.
and people have ideas about this, whether they agree or not. It's like, but when you look up the definitions, excuse my reach, I'm going to go look here. You look up the definitions for propaganda. Propaganda, information of a biased or misleading nature used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or a point of view. And other definitions, propaganda is a systematic effort to manipulate other people's beliefs, attitudes, or actions by means of symbols. Symbols are words, gestures, banners, monuments, music, clothing, insignia, hairstyles. In short, art. Art is you look at the demonstrations yesterday with the manga hats and the flags. Look at the peace symbol of the '60s, anti-war movement. Look at the American flag. Look at the dove in the olive branch. They're all symbols conveying an idea, and it's, to me, propaganda. The word has got very bad negative connotations, right? But it's a
Very negative.
neutral word.
Yes.
It's a neutral word. It's how you use it. That's like what Diego said. All art's propaganda. It's but what's the difference between each propaganda? I was born in '39, so my parents had this pamphlet. I remember in my house, which I have a copy now. This is one from theirs. Disney,
Donald. Okay.
Donald screaming, and the thing is, what is propaganda? Disney's company was taken over by, the government more or less to produce propaganda. They did films and they did pamphlets, but this one analyzes propaganda and what it is. It tries to define it for people, and basically, there's in there are two types in the day. If you can see this, there's Hitler here. Whoops, in America. So there's Nazi propaganda and American or democratic propaganda. So everybody uses propaganda, and it really came into the fore here, right in the war, fighting the war. Well, even before the First World War, there's so many posters, and Hollywood went totally propaganda with their films, their war films. Their stand was very propagandistic most of the time. Comic books, we all know, and how the negative character that was created, particularly with the Japanese in the 40s
Yes.
comic books, were hideous monsters, you know. So it's everybody's used it, one side or the other.
So, but that's a very, it's an interesting point that, okay, he's saying that all art is propaganda, and obviously we're not getting into an art history conversation
Right.
of, you know, a collegiate level conversation on propaganda art. But is that the fact that art in and of itself is propaganda, or people have recognized the power of art and therefore use it to create propaganda?
Yeah, more than likely that's the case, and that goes way back. We all know the
And
church used paintings to connect and promote ideas. You know, they're still all out there. Paint,
yeah,
mosaics, statues, architecture. You know, it's all been used for centuries.
yeah, and it's used to convey very specific, ideologies,
Right.
um, of whether, you use the church, would say, the Catholic Church there,
Right.
and the cruciform in and of itself is the, showing Christ in that very vulnerable spot,
Right.
and he's all laid out, and uh, there are those images that they want to project at certain times, and then if you look at, we talked about the Sistine Chapel, and I think it's in the back of the Sistine Chapel, but the Judgment Day
Yeah.
of Christ
Mhm.
coming in then as the superhero
Right.
conqueror,
Very,
which
very
couldn't be
powerful.
further from this. It doesn't, it could be further from one from the other.
Right. Right.
Um,
Well, it's like that. Everybody looks at talking about Christ. Look at everybody's got an image of what Christ looked like. Nobody knows. It was like 2,000 years ago. We're talking about,
yeah,
and yet
yeah,
yet artists have rendered their interpretations, which
yes,
they have a basic look, but the one that took, I believe, is what the hell was his name? Hoffman. Christ is praying in the
it's the
garden, and then
the
there's
praying hands, right?
right, and then the head shot, which is the long wavy hair and the short beard, very trimmed, very neat,
Very
very
clean,
Anglo-Saxon looking,
very
very very
Anglo-Saxon.
white looking, and we all
Yeah,
know he was Semitic. I mean, come on. But
yes,
so there's a propaganda aspect to painting Christ in that manner to show that he is what, one of us white people. That's
yeah.
kind of,
If
you
you're
know what I
trying to
mean?
if you're trying to sell if you're trying to sell your message to the Caucasians,
Right.
make the hero Caucasian.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. So
that's what you're doing.
again, nobody knows. If you read Josephus, the Jewish Roman historian, if I
Yeah,
recall right, there's very little mention. He does mention Christ, but if I recall, there's some reference that I've read in the multitude of books that I've read. And again, I'm no historian. Here we are trying to pretend to be historians. Admittedly, I'm
We're just having
not.
a conversation.
So it's like
Yeah,
there's snippets of stuff that I remember, and they kind of like take them, whether it's real or not. Again, I don't know. It could be propaganda itself. But Josephus describes him, whatever his cubits are. I forgot how that measures out to a foot, but say whatever. He was 4
yeah,
feet tall. He was hunchbacked, and he had a single eyebrow, like Frida. Now, if I was to paint that picture of Jesus right now, that he looked like that, people would get offended. They would be pissed off because there's
yes,
a looksism aspect to it all. He's got to look pretty or handsome,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
But what
yeah,
about the least of these, my brethren? You know what I'm saying? Those
yeah,
who consider the least of these, those who aren't pretty people. I
yeah.
mean, it's all very interesting. But now, so, I mean, that image of Christ is very propagandistic to me.
Oh, yeah, most certainly is. Again, because you're going back to the definition that you read there of that your truth. Well, the fact is, the way that he is painted is not the way the people of that land of that time looked.
Not at all. And the
to
clothes,
try
the
to try to
costumes are always look at like I don't know some of these movies. Some of them are pretty good. The movies about Jesus. Franco Zeffirelli I think, was a masterpiece. It was like beautifully made. But he's an Englishman, of course, playing Christ. He was great. He was great in the part. I forgot the actor's name. But there was one, Jeffrey Hunter. Do you remember Jeffrey Hunter at all? Very
no, I'm
pretty.
sorry.
And they picked him to play Christ mainly because of his light blue eyes. And when they shot him on the cross crucified, they shot him first, not shaven. And so they saw the shot of him upstairs with hairy armpits, and they decided this is not right. We'll offend somebody. So they shaved his armpits. Like hairy armpits would offend somebody on Jesus if Jesus. I mean, it's really weird to me. Again, here we all coming back to art being utilized to
Yeah.
convey ideas that are could be false. In this case, who knows? You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. This is
We have no
this isn't
photographs.
a commentary or critique of whether it's real or not. It is simply that we know without a shadow of a doubt that imagery has been altered to convey that message to a certain group of people.
Well,
Right.
to go on further, can we? Is that all right?
Yeah.
We had a commission. I won't say what religion. There was one of the Christian religions commissioned when my brother was alive, Tim and me, to paint some. They were doing a Bible, their take on the Bible, and they asked us to choose a section of the Bible that we would like to illustrate. And I said, creation. The creation of the earth, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, the expulsion. Because I mean, that just appealed to me. I mean, it's just like it's a great subject. And so we painted Adam and Eve. I chose to paint Adam and Eve. From what I understand, the origin of that story is Sumerian. It goes back to ancient Sumeria, the creation story. So I
Yep.
made them look, darker skinned with long black hair. And Adam had long hair, I mean, and a beard, and Eve had long black hair. And we created our own vision of Eden, which had to look different, we thought, from being expelled out there into the regular world. So this fantastic tree of life with the rays of light shining down. In any event, they saw the art and they rejected it all. They said, first of all, it looks like fantasy. It looks like the Lord of the Rings backgrounds. And Adam and Eve, they said, no, we won't go with that. So Gene was dealing with these people. I wasn't talking about them. They said, Gene said, well, what do you want Eve to look like? And they said, they actually came back with this. This is totally bizarre to me. Make her look like Grace Kelly. And then they said, Adam, his hair, shave his beard, cut his hair off. They said, Gene, ask them if they had razor blades back then in the garden. And so, what do you want? Give them a 50s, literally, they said the 1950s style haircut. Well, would that be a brush cut? Or would that be a DA? Well, what the hell would that be? A TC, a Tony Curtis, or a whatever? What would that be? And then the garden is so bizarre. Trim it, clean it, neaten it up. They said, make it look like Versailles. So, so we obviously didn't work out. But propaganda again, right? I mean, let's create this image that we want to convey.
I'm gonna move us to another point in time that is not connected we're not connecting the religion to
Yes.
The Nazis.
No,
But
no.
Right after you brought up this subject, maybe a day or two afterwards, the New Yorker put out an article of the collection of Nazi art and Nazi propaganda collected that was seized by the United States military.
Like the Monuments Men collecting all the other art of Europe, right? Yeah, but only the propaganda art of the Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah. So they collected all this stuff and they have it stored in a massive vault. And I guess they sent a lot of the art back to Germany if it wasn't deemed celebrating the Reich too much.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to me to see, like you said, it all depends on how it's used. The two different ways they approached their art. Now, first let me say that, Hitler hated anything of modern art, abstract art, anything that wasn't very straightforward.
Traditional realistic artwork. Yep.
Yeah, he banned it. But when they would depict him or the right in any way, it was very this noble thing, very large scale stuff.
Huge paintings, yeah.
And so the idea was that, that when the commoners would see it, he would be larger than life, so
Yeah.
that creates this idolization in our minds. I mean, we even see that today with actors, because we see actors on the big screen, you know they're larger than life, and it creates this weird reality in our head that all
Yeah.
these people are larger than life. And then when you actually see, Tom Cruise in real life, and he's 5'8", you know,
Right. You get, there's a
so
complete,
it's that kind of thing of where they're painting him in this Christ-like form. And one of the paintings I saw, that all of his men were surrounding them, and if you look at it, uh, the artist was clearly referencing back to the Last Supper,
sure.
of where Hitler is right in the middle. All the men are
Yep.
surrounding. Even some of them are looking away, and
Yep.
um,
Paraphrase that
it
so
was
that
very
you're,
interesting.
yeah, there's
And
propaganda in a great form, right? You paraphrase the Last Supper scene, so you subliminally are trying to appeal to a Christian audience, right? You're trying to hit that group to say, see, our Führer, our savior. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And then the one of him, I think in that same batch, isn't it? They have the one of him in the silver armor, like a Teutonic knight. That
yes,
always struck me as so freaking bizarre because you have this flag and the Nazi flag and the symbol, talking about symbols, right? And him in the shiny armor with this Hitler's head sticking out of it. It's almost like a Mel Brooks kind of like thing to me. Sort of, it's very
yeah.
springtime for
Uh,
Hitler or something.
so you know, uh, and then on the opposite side of that, when they were trying to then portray their enemy, they did the gross caricatures
Well,
of.
if you go back to Raymaker was, I think, a Dutch cartoonist. Maybe I think I've got a book. I got tons of stuff. He did all the World War One propaganda stuff where the Hun is the Hun. The Nazis are, oh my God, they are sheer. They're monsters. And they're drawn in that manner to be hideous. I'm sure the other side was drawing us to look exactly the same way, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you take one side makes the other side look like a monster.
yeah,
That's the way it goes. That's in you.
and
Very
and
powerful, very very influential, right? Like look what the Nazis did with the Jewish anti-Jewish propaganda. They made the Jews in all their cartoons look like these hideous trolls and rats. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The but you can use it for good or for bad. Again, right? Hitler.
yeah, and so then bringing this conversation, into the modern times, or somewhat modern times, like, do you feel like the overt use of art as propaganda, is that something that you think still exists? Has it toned down? Is it more rampant? What do you think?
Oh, I think no, I don't. Well, I don't think the extreme caricaturization is there anymore. I don't think that exists, right? That doesn't seem to me. I don't know. I'm again like I'm not. I have no vast knowledge even of the contemporary scene. I'm sitting here at my easel most of the time. It. No, I think it's gotten a lot less of it. You know what I'm saying? Uh, it isn't as strong, overt as in your face as it was. I mean, like I said, it was everywhere in the comic books, right? I mean,
Yep.
kids were buying comic books. I had them. I grew up in the '40s. I had all that stuff, and you never thought twice about it when you read it. You just were reading it because you weren't as a kid. You're not thinking about that stuff. You got to be carefully taught to hate all the people your relatives hate before you're 6 or 7 or 8. So the great song from South Pacific, the central song from South Pacific about prejudice. So I wasn't taught yet. You know what I mean? By my
Yep.
parents didn't teach me, but I mean the world. I wasn't taught yet. So I would look at the stuff. I didn't think twice about it. I just, oh, that's, you know, but it was everywhere. If you open up Al Avison's Captain America stuff with the Japanese. I mean, my God, take a look
Yeah,
at it.
through advertising and everything.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you the same question, but in a slightly different way. Do you think it's there, but maybe perhaps a little bit more subtle?
Well, probably. What do you think? Can you see it? Where do you see
I
it? Where
do.
do you
Yeah,
see it? Where do you see it?
I, I tend to see it in social media a lot, which I know
Let's
that
see. You're
you're
more
not.
connected.
Yeah, that you're not too involved in that, but it's very interesting to me to see that there's a meme culture, right? MEME, meme.
Yeah, I think I.
And so it's now where anyone can do it. They take an image of whatever. A lot of times it's screen grabs from movies,
Yeah.
pictures of celebrities and things like that. And then they'll put funny phrases and things like that with them, right?
Hmm.
That's the typical meme.
Okay. Sure.
But what we've also seen happening is that people will attribute quotes. So they'll put a quote of a famous actor or a politician or whatever,
Hmm.
and they'll put a quote with it. Now, more often than not, that person never didn't say that. They didn't say the
Yeah.
quote. It
Or it's
had
out of
nothing.
context.
It's completely out of context, and it will stir up such fervor
Oh, absolutely.
online, and the people just boom,
Right.
and they go at each other nonstop.
Well, again, like talking about the word propaganda, I used to work for Fulton J. Sheen. We've talked about this. He was an American bishop. He was the
Mhm.
national director for the Society for the Propagation of the Faith. Sounds like a big mouthful. And it is.
Yeah.
It's ancient. It goes back to the Inquisition, believe it or not. And he tried to get the name changed. But it was basically the missionary branch of the Catholic Church, and or his obsession was to bring Americans to an awareness of the third world, the haves and the have-nots. Those are the kinds of movies I made for him. So I made films. Tim and I made films for the bishop to show the horrendous conditions of the have-nots, the 2/3 of the world that go to bed hungry every night, and and
Okay.
that. And so I know the full well what is. I wasn't attempting to make propaganda films. I was trying to make films showing what the bishops was trying to convey in terms of the haves and the have-nots. And so I would shoot photography myself, or use photo resources like Magnum and Black Star to get stills, or CARE or UNICEF or whoever. And I would take this image, cut it next to this image, and put a piece of sound behind on the moviola as we edited it, and it creates a whole reality. And if I took that image and put it in front, and put a different sound over it, there's a whole separate reality. Just by the
Yeah.
juxtaposition of imagery, same image, say different image, put them together, take another image, put that image with that, you can create whole ideas and conversations that are completely different. And that goes on
See,
every
yeah,
day. The choices you, as a documentary filmmaker, the simple fact of the matter is, if I aim my camera here, I am not aiming it over there. So there's a choice
yeah,
I've made already to not aim it over there. So everything becomes selective, and I guess you can call that part of a propaganda methodology.
and yeah, and that does make sense in those definitions of that you are trying to push an agenda,
Absolutely.
you know, of
Oh,
some sort.
I
Now,
started. I took on these things, and the final film we made for the bishop, he said, "Boys," because I was a lot younger, and that's how he talked to Tim and me. I would like a film aimed at American teenagers. So this was 1967. You talk about the polarization now. It was intense back then too, because of the Vietnam War and the whole the pro-war, anti-war, all this stuff flying together. And so we started to cut this film together for him, and I just would just he was normally he narrated the films. So this one he wasn't narrating. It was just a free-flowing half-hour juxtaposition of imagery that Tim and I came up with, and it was just our choice to put one picture next to another. But the ultimate objective was to show the extreme differences. So it's almost a Mondokani approach of shock value. The leper and I was in West Africa shooting, and I went to leprosarium and shot footage, and oh my God, it was overwhelming. And I would stick that next to a beautiful model's makeup face, putting makeup on to show it, to shock people into a recognition of what's going on out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The things that you don't think about. Here's the things that you don't think about, sort of like approach. And I mean, what was that? Yeah, it's propaganda. You know, you could call that propaganda, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, my objective
Um,
was not to bring them to a political point of view with that film. My objective was not to bring them to a religious point of view. You know, there was no conversionary mentality with it. I personally was just trying to, you know, boom, boom, get people to get their eyes opened up and look around at the
yeah.
world. You know?
From your perspective, but I mean, I remember what you said about Sheen and him being a very genuine
Yeah.
guy, but others that are also opening the purse strings,
Oh
they
yeah.
may have had the agenda.
Oh God. I'm not saying that at all. That's not true. Believe me.
There's
But
the agenda.
again, it's like I don't know. Is to use the come back to the term propaganda again? It's what it's a systematic effort to manipulate other people's beliefs, attitudes, and actions by means of symbols. Symbols, of
Yeah.
course, are art. A system to manipulate. There's the key word there: manipulate. Now,
Yeah.
is
And
that good or bad, or
yeah,
neither?
and it can be completely benign,
Yeah,
particularly I'm going to say in a capitalist society, which we live in, we operate in,
yep,
and
yep, yep.
we do business in.
Yes, indeed.
Advertising
Oh my God,
is 100%. Like
propaganda.
every shoe manufacturer out there makes the best shoes.
Yes. Well, not only that, but the cigarette ads, which they allowed on television back in the day,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They declared
yeah,
that one brand declared that they were good for you.
yes.
Smoking was good for you. You know?
I remember seeing an old ad with a guy dressed up as a doctor. He had his
Yeah.
doctor, and 9 out of 10 doctors
Yes.
prefer Lucky Strikes.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the pitch of use the doctor to pitch your false idea, your lie, your message. Then Old Gold used to have the cigarette pack. I remember what the hell was it? The Jackie Gleason show back in the day, maybe his variety show, I think. Dennis James would advertise it. That was the announcer, and they would have these cigarette packs with the girls inside, with two legs, two beautiful dancers' legs, dancing on stage as a cigarette pack. So using sex to sell your cigarette. God,
Yes,
how much is sex used to sell cars, for Christ's sake? I mean, back I don't know
everything.
that maybe not that much now, but boy, that was huge, right?
Oh
Well, it
yeah,
was in my time, in the 50s and
yeah. It still is everything,
yeah,
everything. And talking to advertising again, I know this is not necessarily in your realm, but if you look at
you do a lot of
Instagram,
advertising stuff, don't you?
yes,
Just
yeah,
to throw that
but
in, okay? Yeah, go on.
yeah, but if you look at like Instagram and things like that, where people are now pushing their personal brands,
Ah,
they are still overwhelmingly using sex to sell something.
I guess it works, right?
It it works 100% of the time. It works, regardless of the movement that's going on
Right.
to get away from that. It still works. So people are now doing it on the individual level through
Yeah,
these various channels and various means. Um, it's it it's pretty crazy when you see the volume of
yeah,
outlets.
yeah,
But the we go through relatively benign of sneaker sales. Of like, okay, yeah, we have the best shoes and blah 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 blah, and with perhaps the most recognizable logo, not the, but got to be top five, Nike, right? That
yeah,
Nike swoosh logo
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
It was designed
has
by a young
gone.
girl, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
like she might have been like 17 at the time, I think.
yeah.
Um, but you were talking earlier about the symbols,
Yeah.
right? And so what I wanted to ask you this earlier. We were talking earlier in the day. If you look at the peace sign just as the symbol, it means nothing, right?
Right.
It's just, if you again look at the American flag, it's just the stars and stripes, a blue rectangle, stars in there, stripes.
Stripes
Uh,
signifying the original colonies, the stars signifying how many states
yep.
there are now.
And then how is it then over time that these symbols or these icons become symbols, become something larger that then represents an ideology?
But I mean, it's used by everyone too to declare who they are. The left wing wraps themselves in a flag, the right wing wraps themselves in a flag, and they'll claim, I'm a patriot. You're not a patriot. It's like
Yeah, it's like, everybody gets these. I mean, it certainly goes beyond our borders too. These,
oh yeah, it's everywhere.
again, the flags, the representations of
Well, look at
ideology. Go ahead. Sorry.
the communist hammer and sickle. On a red field, you got this yellow hammer and sickle. To us, we grew up with the image of them. Man, that's frightening. That's terrifying. That's horrifying. That's communism. That's the Bolsheviks. But what the hell is it when you break it down? It's a hammer and it's a sickle. It's
That's a very interesting one that you bring up. Okay, right. And here's to me
it's
it's very interesting that the original idea of that, again, was supposed to represent what the working class.
the worker. It's a hammer and a sickle. It's workers. There's nothing negative about the two objects on the flag, but they grew to be, to us, right, to the Western world, frightening, terrifying.
Well, for very good reason,
Oh yeah, no, I'm not.
What happened under that banner?
Totally, right? It's horrendous what they did. Overwhelming.
And it's amazing to me now. I start seeing that symbol pop up in places here by young kids, in college and whatnot.
They have no freaking idea of what the
idea.
They have no freaking, and I'm trying to refrain from language, idea of what the hell that is. I mean, just because you have a bunch of neo-Nazis waving swastikas, you don't wave that hammer and sickle flag back in their face thinking that that's some good symbol. It's not. Read what the Bolsheviks did. I mean, I'm not saying that the Russians' imbalance of the haves and the have-nots was so extreme. It was. We all know that. The original 1% or 1/20th of 1% over there. But what the Bolsheviks did, what the soldiers were throwing down their weapons on the front line once the revolution started. It was the First World War is going on, and the Russian Tsar's army is out there, and they're going back. They portray it propaganda-wise to join the noble cause of the revolution. Bullshit. Maybe some did, but they went back to pillage and loot because everybody else was getting it, man. I'm going back to get some too, And what they did it's horrendous. People should read about that stuff. There's a couple of books on it. Where the Forgotten People. I read one. Unmentionable People or something. The aristocracy that's not been talked about for all this time. And you see now what happened to them and how what came about. So they're all freaking monstrosities. All sides. You take the extreme right, you take Hitler and you take Stalin, they're so far right and so far left, you go around the circle and they meet on the bottom. They're exactly the same fucking person.
Yeah.
Exactly
the same.
And you watch the extremes here in this country, they're the same goddamn person. And they don't know it. That's the terrifying, frightening thing about it. They think they're all right, and that way.
The outcome is never good.
No.
The outcome is never good.
Never good. All egged on by symbols. Symbols are all those flags yesterday. You know what I mean? All that stuff, symbols, powerful, they're influential. And that's us artists who are coming up with that stuff.
Yeah, and it is. And it's, particularly, with, the MAGA stuff. It's boiled down to such a simple icon.
Yeah.
MAGA, MAGA, MAGA.
Right.
But the block white letters on the red hats.
Again,
and
that, yeah, like the a segue into the. I know I don't know how much we want to talk about stuff. It gets very controversial, I know, but make America great again. What the f does that mean? Like, what do you mean? It wasn't great already, or when was it great to you? When was it great? Make America great again. What do you mean again? Okay, again.
And for whom?
When
For whom?
again? You know, when? When are you talking about? You talking about the
Yep.
slave era? You talking about the conquistadors? You're talking about the invasion and the murder of 100 million people in the Americas?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Where's it great? Where was it? You know what I'm saying? What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
And that that idea for me is is going along exactly with what you're saying of making it great again. And my problem with it is there's no predefinition of, well, when is it determined to be great, and do we want to go back to that time?
Well, you're right.
Because okay, are you saying it was great in the 1960s? For a lot of people, it was not great in the 1960s.
1950s. A lot of people
You
know
know,
damn well it was not great in the 1950s. Well,
nor the
40s, the
20s,
30s, the
the 10,
20s.
like
No,
1800s. When
right,
define for me when
right.
the era that you want to go back to,
It's
and then we
crazy.
can have a conversation. But it's so just ethereal.
Yeah,
But so many people are grouping under it and binding under it as
yeah,
a masthead.
yeah.
Um,
That's
that
frightening to me. It's it,
it
it
is.
really
I mean,
it really.
if there was some definition that I could understand then of
You're right.
when was it great,
Well, you
what
say you
era
want a
do we
revolution, you
want to
better change your
go back
mind instead. You know what I'm saying? The Beatles song. Come on.
to?
You know.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, you see, all these radical revolutionists like that, right wing, left wing, they point out there. They're pointing at you. They're pointing at me. Turn the goddamn finger around and point at yourself. People, I don't care what your ideology is. Point at yourself, not out there.
Yep,
Change
I'm with you.
this and this and this. Give. What do you do? What good do you do in the world?
Yep, I'm right there with you, man. We need introspection. Uh,
Oh my God.
the uh, Other people aren't causing this nation to go down the tubes.
No.
We all need to look at ourselves, and the John F. Kennedy line: "Ask not what you could, what
Exactly.
your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country."
Absolutely.
Uh, what can you do for your fellow man? The teachings of Jesus. Love thy
Oh,
neighbor as yourself. Um,
back to that. Whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. You know, all of
yeah,
that message. Take any of the ideology of the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the peacemakers. You know, a new law I give you that you love one another.
yeah, and right now we are not there. We're not.
No,
We're not
it
there.
it you know it. Look at the whole foundation. It's an ideology that was an ideal that was certainly not constructed by people who were equalityists. Let's be honest about it. Granted, the ideals were there; they're great, and it's an ever evolving thing. So let's look at it in that way. Of course, not only go back into the past and hammer away with the bad stuff, you know. But yeah, it's an evolutionary thing, and we got to
Yes.
keep that mentality, and we have to look at ourselves in the mirror. You know, the Michael Jackson song. I'm talking to the man in the mirror. You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's like look at yourself. What are you doing? What are you being like? You know, this is what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I mean, and it goes for, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a tough situation because,
It isn't that tough. All you got to do is just stop hating.
yeah,
You just stop it.
and the every okay, I think it would be beneficial for all of us to stop believing that everything everyone else says is a personal attack, on us. Like,
Right,
not everything that everybody says out there is an attack on me.
right.
And not every belief that everyone has out there is an affront on me and my beliefs. Not, we need to stop thinking that way. That like,
Exactly.
well, they're offending me. They're offending me. Like,
Well, and
no.
on top of that, or in addition to that, or well, part of that is to celebrate the variety that we all are, to celebrate the difference that we all are, the beauty of the difference that we all are, that nature is, that everything isn't the same, that every atom is completely different, every freaking snowflake is completely different. The beauty is variety. The beauty is all the differences in the world, the ups and the downs and the darks and the lights, in the smalls and the bigs, and the celebrate the glory of creation, which is variety.
Variety.
It
And I'm gonna bring this back around to propaganda and good propaganda,
Yeah.
but probably wasn't perceived as good propaganda by everyone. Uh, the Norman Rockwell painting with it was the segregation painting. You know the one I'm talking
Oh,
about.
the golden rule. Or the
Yes,
little girl going,
yes. Yeah, that's the one.
that was painted for Look magazine for the problem we all live with. I think was the title of it. She's
Yep,
being marched into the school by the marshals. It's a
yep,
magnificent freaking painting, man.
yeah. And it's again, you're looking at an ideology and trying to sway people into a direction
Exactly.
of belief, but that belief is the better way.
Yes, that belief is the much better way. Well, he also had the other things that he was conveying too, was the other, basically almost all white world that he painted for so many years for the Post magazine covers. Very
Yep.
propagandistic there. But look at how he shifted, and what he got to. I always loved his Rosie the Riveter, his powerful lady sitting with the sandwich and with the
I
flag
don't know that
behind
I've
her.
ever seen that.
Oh,
I don't
look
know
it
that I've
up.
ever seen it. I'll have to check it
She's
out.
got her foot firmly planted on Mein Kampf. Bam!
It's awesome.
It's incredible.
So we have people saying hello over here. We got a few people still watching. If anybody watching has a question or wants to say anything at all or chime in at all, please feel free. We would, love to bring it up. If you have any thoughts about what we're talking about or whatever, just chime in. So I just wanted to acknowledge the people watching there,
Yeah,
Greg.
yeah, I agree.
Um, and so we could go on and on and on forever
Yeah,
of the use of art and the subtlety of it, and the power of it, and
yeah.
for in a lot of regards, in a lot of instances, I think that the visual art form has been downplayed, uh, particularly in American society.
I think there was the visual aspect of art. Yeah, I think it was always
Yeah,
pejorative. I mean, look at what they looked at comic books. Oh, comic books. That's merely comic book idea. They, the idea was that because a kid was reading a comic book that was anti-intellectual in some way, because it was just all words.
yeah,
There was a time frame. I don't know if it's still that way, but back when I was a kid, that was the basic concept. Picture books. That's for the
yeah,
ignorant. You know what I
yeah.
mean? You have to have all words. Pictures are a lazy way to get reality or something. And yet it existed before language did. What we
Yeah, it most certainly did. But it's interesting that I don't think I think in Europe it's a different
Oh
there's
yeah,
a different level of appreciation for the visual arts. I'm not talking film. I'm not talking music, but I think probably for the dance and performing arts and for the
yeah,
visual arts,
yeah,
there's a different level of appreciation amongst
yeah.
just the not the common man, the populace,
Right. Hmm.
it's a smaller subgroup of people that are going to go out of their way
Right.
to look at art. However, I think in doing that, we maybe have forgotten that the visual arts in any form still carry a lot of power with
Hugely.
them. And that's, with those symbols that we were talking about, whether again it's the brand of the Nike swoosh,
Yeah.
that means something,
Yeah.
um, or the Coca-Cola logo,
Yeah.
that
Oh God.
it's a
Yeah.
brand that represents something to, the American flag, the peace sign,
Mickey Mouse.
or even as I was telling you before, the power of a meme, a stupid little image
Hmm.
with words on it, can spread disinformation so fast across, it just
Yeah,
like a
that's the
wildfire.
problem. Yeah, right now,
It,
right? Because the proliferation of the private media is like overwhelming. The lies that are just keep being spread. It's hugely dangerous, right?
yeah, and Adrian Wagner one says, "Hi, Greg from the gerbil," with a winky face emoji, and also says that people are going to interpret any image symbol according to their own individual experiences. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that sounds
I
right.
do,
Huh?
yeah, I agree with that too. I got to think about that a little bit because I
Well,
agree with it. I
yeah,
agree with it. Um,
I think there's
and
universal symbols though,
yeah,
right? The sun,
the sun. Yeah,
right? The rays,
uh,
the circle with the rays shooting out of it is a pretty universal symbol. No, or not?
yeah, it is. I'm really thinking of that. I right now I'm absolutely agreeing uh, with Adrian. I'm trying to think if I would disagree in any
Well, how about the dove? The
circumstance,
dove
but yeah,
holding
I can't.
the dove holding the olive branch in its mouth. Is that can that be interpreted other than the out going back to what the Noah's Ark, and ultimately representing peace. Can that be
Yeah,
looked at
but I mean, but
multiple?
if you have such a negative experience um, under that symbol, or you will interpret it from your own personal experience and your own personal
Right.
drive. And again, that's that is one of the problems.
That
That
is
is
one.
one of the problems is that if something isn't clearly defined as of its intent, it is left open to interpretation. Now, in a lot of instances in the art world, that's phenomenal. It's a fantastic thing that you're leaving some form of interpretation
The viewer
up to the viewer.
or the listener,
Um,
if it's music, right, or
in music,
poetry, or
absolutely up to the listener. Uh, but that also could be a very dangerous thing of that, and I don't want to be I'm going to be offensive here. I don't mean to be, but it probably will be. We're talking about the MAGA logo again. I know people that are under that banner that are just they're social conservatives. They feel like they have not been heard by anybody in politics, you know, and they feel like they're being heard by someone, and now someone represents them in their voice, and that's why they raise that banner.
uh-huh.
But
Mhm.
on the opposite extreme of that, you have the neo Nazis and the white fascists and
Yep.
all of that stuff that I just absolutely that are also waving that flag for one reason or another. And unfortunately, those two people with completely different agendas in their own life are under that same banner and flag.
Right, and
You
that's
know,
that's tragic. That's
and
sad. I mean,
that's not a good. That's
no,
tough. That's a tough thing.
very tough, very tough.
Because when you gather under a symbol, you're painted with a big broad brush.
Right. You're all grouped
And
as to one way of thinking, and if clearly that's not so. Everybody's an individual, and they have their own thoughts and own experiences. Or just what Adrian said, it's all interpretable. So you're reading into it all. The same with any religion, right? I mean, how many varieties are I grew up in the Catholic Church. I no longer involve myself with religion, but I grew up. But there was everything from, like I say, Fulton J. Sheen to his to Father Coughlin, who was a right-wing priest in Detroit who had a radio show that was his followers were American Nazis in the German American Bund and these America First rallies that they had in Madison Square Garden. They were fans of Father Cogman, emanating from Detroit and spreading hate. You had that. Then you had Daniel Berrigan, who was a pacifist priest of the '60s, anti-war priest, who was very completely the opposite. But you know what I mean? Within that same under that same umbrella, you have all these varieties. And so
Yeah.
you can't sum it all up and say they're all this one way. Again, that's us being very prejudicial to say they're all that one way. These anybody, whoever you happen to be talking about,
Yeah.
it's not true.
But at some point, now we'll talk. I'm going back, to the Nazi banners in Madison Square Garden and all that.
That's a whole world to explore.
At some point, when the banner you're standing up under goes a certain way, right? You either need to go you're either all in, or you need to separate. You can't be
And you can't have one foot here, one.
You can't be wet socks with it,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and and this is not about propaganda so much as when United States fighting in World War II, right? We weren't in the war. We weren't involved in the war. We were outside of it. And then the bombing of World War II, or bombing of Pearl Harbor, happened.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden we are all in, right? So
Yep.
that's not a propaganda thing, but it's we can no longer ignore what is happening on our globe.
No, we can't.
And at some point you have to take a stand and say, okay, yeah, I can be painted with this brush because I firmly believe in all of it, or I absolutely not. This does not represent me as an individual.
Right.
The United States, in my opinion, is about individual freedoms, right?
Yeah.
We're about that rugged individuality, going, staking our claims and doing all that, and
freedom to express ourselves.
Yeah, and just for me personally, this is my personal belief. Getting caught up on anything that is very broad, sweeping movements, I kind of
shy away from that. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I bristle at it a little bit.
Yeah.
But again, that's me personally.
Yeah.
So, man, we are at 5 o'clock, Greg.
Yeah, we are.
We are at the.
Jean was just signaling.
she's over there. So
yeah, this conversation is great. I mean, this can go on and on and on, and I mean, we'll carry it on too. I'm sure, maybe next time, or something. I don't know.
So I got to say, if the people watching, if you like this, tune in again. Hopefully people will watch this video later. If you like it, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all the different social medias. And if you are a fan of Greg, or you are interested in his art, it is at spiderwebart, all one word, .com. And before we hang on, social media is crushing sensitivity and context today. Keep preaching, LOL. I agree with you 100%, Dennis Murphy. All right. So we're signing off here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Greg.
Adios, amoeba.
All right. Good night. Gene can hit.
Gene's work.
Okay, I hit finish.
Gene's trying to stop it now.
Wait.